السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم صلاة وسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيبي يا رسول الله Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. All praise is due to Allah, the Creator, the Sustainer. Peace, blessings and salutations upon the greatest of His creation, Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. Yes, we went through chapter 3, part 1, where we ended where we ended with the marriage of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when he was 25 years of age, and Bibi Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha was 40 years of age. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, we will continue with chapter 3, part 2, inshallah. By the will of Allah, the honesty, the loyalty, the trustworthiness of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. What we are discussing today, in this discussion, we find that the loyalty, honesty and trustworthiness of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam began to be accepted by all the people. He had been granted so much of knowledge, wisdom and intelligence that major disputes between the leaders of tribes were solved by him effortlessly, leading to many self-acclaimed people of knowledge accepting and regarding the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as a great thinker and leader. It was during the construction of the Kaaba wherein the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam displayed such skills. How? Why do we mention this? That people had found him as a great thinker and leader. All the people were looking at him as the most truthful and the most loyal and the most honest. When Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was 35 years old, a strong thunderstorm struck Makkah and destroyed the structure of the Kaaba. The building which was built, the building of the Kaaba, which was built by Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam, was now beginning to show its age. It was repaired repeatedly during the times of Amalaka and Jurham tribe and Qusay tribe, but due to being encircled by the mountains, the water which flowed from them would constantly flood the area below, creating a need to find some permanent solution to the matter. Water blocks were once erected by the Quraysh, but to no avail. Thus, a unanimous discussion was made to demolish and reconstruct the Kaaba, strengthen its foundation and include a raised door and roof. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam partook in this with the Quraysh leaders transporting bricks for placement. Allahu Akbar. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, look at the simplicity of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah guide us all to lead a simple life, inshallah. Each tribe was assigned to a specific task, but a major dispute later broke as to who would have the honor of replacing the Hajar Aswad, the black stone. Allahu Akbar. A disagreement lasting 4 days, and one which almost led to swords being used. The Banu Abdedar, the Banu Adi, all swore to give their lives for this honor, to place the Hajar Aswad on its place, and in proving so, dipped their fingers in bowls of blood and licked them as a custom which was practiced during the period of ignorance, to show that they are ready to give their lives for this honor, to give their lives for any certain dispute. But in this dispute, the honor was of placing the Hajar Aswad. What to do? On the 5th day, the tribes gathered to find some resolution to this problem. An old man suggested that whoever enters the haram of the Kaaba at the break of dawn shall decide its fate. Everyone agreed, all the tribes agreed to this resolution, and it was in the will of Allah that the following morning, who was the person to come at the break of dawn in the haram of the Kaaba? That person was the personality which is an example to the mankind. The Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was the person who entered the haram of the Kaaba at the break of dawn. When he was seen by the people, they began to shout, indeed he is Ameen, indeed he is the truthful one, we are happy with whatever he decides. The Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was given the honor to resolve this issue. And how does he resolve it? Allahu Akbar. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam resolved this by asking each tribe to select a leader. Each tribe to select a leader. Thereafter, placing the Hajr Aswad on a cloth. Allahu Akbar. After placing it on a cloth and asking those chosen to lift it by its ends. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, look at the wisdom of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, giving an opportunity to every person of the tribe to take part in this honor, to take part in this honored act of placing the Hajr Aswad. All the leaders who are chosen were told to hold at the end of the cloth, at the ends of the cloth, and to lift it. When it reached the wall, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam raised it with his blessed hands and placed it into the correct position. Allahu Akbar. Hence, the tribes were deviated from a massive bloodbath wherein many could have been killed just for the honor of placing the Hajr Aswad. And look at the decision made by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He comes into the haram at the break of dawn and he is given to decide the fate and chooses the leaders of the tribe, tells the tribes to choose a leader and gives everyone an opportunity and places the Hajr Aswad on its place. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to make the correct decisions in our life, inshallah. The materials gathered for the building of the Kaaba at that time was of a lesser amount than needed and resulted in an area being excluded from the new construction. This was named the Hatim by the Quraysh, and it is the area towards which the water of the Kaaba's roof flows. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, the question arises then, how many times was the Kaaba constructed? Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti has stated in his book in Tarikh Makkah that the house of Allah was built on 10 occasions, 10 times it was built. Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti mentions in Tarikh Makkah that the house of Allah was built 10 times. The first time was by the angels directly in a coordination with Baytul Ma'mur, was the first time the Kaaba was constructed. The second time it was constructed by Hazrat Adam Alaihi Salam, and thereafter by the children of Adam Alaihi Salam, which was the third time. The fourth time was by Ibrahim and Ismail Alaihi Salam, as mentioned in the Holy Quran. The fifth time was constructed by the tribe of Amalaka, and the sixth time was constructed by the tribe of Jurham, and then the seventh time was by the ascendant of the Quraysh, Qusay ibn Kilab. We have studied the genealogy of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The eighth time was when the reconstruction was done by the Quraysh, which we just learned, in which Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had taken part in. The ninth time was by Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubayr during his Khilafah. He was the successor, he was the leader when he decided to build the Kaaba according to the structuring and the specifications of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What were the specifications? The specifications were to include the Hatim, lower the door to the ground level and include two doors, one in the western and other in the eastern side of the Holy Kaaba. Nevertheless, the reconstruction was done for the ninth time by Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubayr during his Khilafah. And the 10th time the Kaaba was built, it was lastly rebuilt by Abdul Malik bin Marwan's oppressive governor, Hajjaj bin Yusuf Thaqafi, who also made the Khalifa mention, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubayr mentioned, who built the Kaaba for the 9th time mentioned above. He had made him shaheed. Hajjaj destroyed the Kaaba, constructed by Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubair, and rebuilt it according to its form during the period of ignorance. And this is the Kaaba of the present day. Summarizing it, the 10 times, the first time was by the angels directly in coordination with the Baytul Ma'mur, thereafter by Adam alayhi salam, and thereafter by his children, the children of Adam alayhi salam. The 4th time was by Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam, as mentioned in the Holy Quran. The 5th time was by the tribe of Amalaka. The 6th time was by the tribe of Jurham, and the 7th time was by the ascendant of the Quraysh, Qusay ibn Qilab. The 8th time was the reconstruction by the Quraysh, which we just discussed, in which Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took part. And the 9th time was by the successor and the Khalifa, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Zubair. And the 10th time was by Hajjaj bin Yusuf, who was the governor, the oppressive governor at the time, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan's oppressive governor, Hajjaj bin Yusuf Thaqafi. And this is the present day's Kaaba. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, that is why we mentioned that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all in understanding the seerah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We are very keen and eager to send our children to school to learn all the history, which has many false and many wrong things in it mentioned. But let us learn and let us put effort in learning the seerah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Coming to the next part of my discourse, discussing the close friends of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The friends of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, before his proclamation of prophethood, possessed untarnished reputations. Also, the friends of that person who has an untarnished reputation had friends who had untarnished reputations, Allahu Akbar, and were held in high esteem by the community. His most beloved companion before the proclamation of prophethood, and he was the same person who was the best, the most exalted, and one of the most exalted after the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam left this world physically and was the Khalifa of his time. The same friend was the friend before the proclamation of prophethood, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala an. He accompanied Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in all his travels and was always a close friend to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he was the cousin of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. Hazrat Dammat bin Tha'laba would also be with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Dammat bin Tha'laba was a person who used to treat the mentally ill people during the period of ignorance, and his acceptance of Islam was a miracle of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It has been recorded that Hazrat Dammat bin Tha'laba entered Makkah from his village and heard the kuffar of the Quraysh say that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, ma'azallah, has become unsane soon after his proclamation of prophethood. After seeing Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam being mocked by a group of children walking behind him, Dammat bin Tha'laba became sad and uneasy, approached him and said, "Oh Muhammad, I am a doctor who can treat the mentally ill." Upon hearing this, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam began to praise Allah. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, let us understand from this, what do we learn? That when there is someone who is asking us questions when we are in difficulty, and people are putting blames on us, and people are accusing us, what is the thing to do? What did the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam do when he heard Dammat bin Tha'laba, who said that, "Oh Muhammad, I am a doctor and I can treat the mentally ill"? Upon hearing this, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not accuse him, did not sway him, but the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and spoke a few words, the effect of which astonished Hazrat Dammat bin Tha'laba so much that he immediately accepted Islam and read the kalima of Islam. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, what do we learn? We learn that when we are in the time of difficulty and people are accusing us and people people are saying wrong things to us, we should not turn around and do the same to them, but praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to treat such situations in the appropriate manner, following the sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. Another companion who was a close friend to Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam and a business partner of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam was Qais ibn Sayyid Makhzumi, who was the business partner and another companion of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. Allahu Akbar. Listen to what this companion and close friend of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam says. He says that the Prophet of Allah Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam was always fair in the business transactions, and he would never deceive anyone or argue with anyone. Allahu Akbar. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, Hazrat Qais bin Sayyid Makhzumi is the companion and the business partner of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. Let us take a look at our worldly affairs today. When we do partnerships, we try and oppress our other partner, trying to evade and trying to show that there are no profits in the business, and we have done no profits, and trying to show him that there is no share for him and giving him a less share. Remember that you are going to be accountable for that on the day of Qiyamah. And what is the sunnah method? What is the method of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam? Today when we are asked the cost price of an item, we lie and we do not say the honest price. Why? Because we want to make some worldly bucks, we want to make some extra profits. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, let us learn the act of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam, that he was always fair and he never deceived or argued with anyone. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to be truthful in our business affairs, to be fair in our business affairs, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from deceiving and arguing with people in business transactions, and follow the sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide all our business transactions, inshallah. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, within the Arab community at that time, this could be a question in your mind, that there were two different types of people. There were people who were worshipping idols, and there were people who believed in the concept of one God. And within Arabia, in the community, there were people who believed in the concept of one God and abstained from idol worship and shirk. Even though it remained widespread at that time, every person was engaged in the idol worship, but there were people who are believing in the concept of one God. And the people who are mentioned in the Seerah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam are Hazrat Zayd ibn Amr bin Nufail, the cousin of Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala an. He used to reject polytheism and idol worshipping and openly expressed his hatred for it. This made his uncle Khattab bin Nufail inflict great hardships on Zayd ibn Amr bin Nufail. Why? Because he was saying, and he was openly expressing his hatred for the idol worshipping, going as far that Khattab bin Nufail inflicted so much hardships on him, going as far as to exile him from Makkah to never return. Nevertheless, Hazrat Zayd bin Amr remained firm on Tawheed, in the oneness of Allah, and would always loudly yell the following famous couplets to the kuffar in the congregations. He used to say in his couplets, should I obey one Lord or 1,000? The religious matters of people have been shared, but I have left Lat and Uzza. Lat and Uzza are the idols of the time of ignorance, and every intellectual should do the same as me. Those were the statements of Zayd ibn Amr at that time, when people were engaged in such things. After rejecting polytheism, he traveled to Syria in search of the true religion. Zayd ibn Amr met a Jewish and later met a Jewish leader, and then later met a Christian priest, refusing these religions as well. Zayd ibn Amr was then advised to accept Din Hanif, the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and was told that Ibrahim alayhi salam was neither a Christian nor a Jew, but one who worshipped only one creator was the Deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He returned to Makkah after hearing this and publicly announced, "Oh O people, bear witness that I am a follower of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam's religion. Hazrat Zayd ibn Amr had special interaction with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam before the announcement of prophethood, and they would sometimes visit each other as well. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu reports one day before receiving wahi, the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam met Zayd ibn Amr bin Nufail in a valley of Balda area. He presented food. Met Zayd ibn Amr in a valley of Balda. He presented food to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, but he refused. Hazrat Zayd said, I don't eat the meat slaughtered in the name of the idols. Only that which has been sacrificed in Allah's name is what I eat. And began to criticize the sacrifices of the Quraysh, saying, Allah created this sheep, bringing down rain and providing grass for its eating. O Quraysh, do you still have the audacity to sacrifice it to anything besides Him, besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, what is the reason of mentioning this? That time before the proclamation of prophethood, there were people such as Zayd ibn Amr bin Nufail who are also of the same concept and were believing in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hazrat Asma bint Abu Bakr further states that I saw Zayd ibn Amr resting against the Kaaba saying, Quraysh, none from amongst you but me follows the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It has been narrated in Bukhari, volume number 1, chapter hadith of Zayd ibn Amr bin Nufail. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, so there were people in that time who were believing in the Deen Hanif before the proclamation of the prophethood of Rasulullah Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. Continuing with my discourse, we will find that the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam, as a businessman, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam, business was the family trade of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam. He learned its finer points at a young age from traveling with his uncle Abu Talib, who was himself a successful businessman. The Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam chose this as his occupation and journeyed to different countries as a trader, such as Syria, Basra and Yemen. From this exceptional character, particularly his honesty and trustworthiness, he was given the title of Amin by his fellow travelers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to do business in accordance to the actions of Rasulullah Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam, inshallah. These virtues are essential for a successful businessman and were exceptionally inherent in the Arab traders, a trait found to the city. Hazrat Abdullah bin Abi al-Hamasa once said that I once brought something from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam prior to the proclamation of prophethood. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abi al-Humasa once mentions that I once bought something from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Ta'ala Alaihi Wasallam prior to the proclamation of prophethood. I was short of money and gave whatever I had, promising to return during the day and fulfill the amount. Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abi Hamasa once said that I once bought something from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prior to proclamation of prophethood. I was short of money and gave whatever I had, promising to return during the day and fulfill the amount, and also requested him not to leave the area where the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was. Afterwards, I had unintentionally forgotten my promise to him and returned 3 days later to find the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allahu Akbar, and he was waiting in that very place. He showed no anger on his face for this and simply said, where were you? I've been waiting for the past 3 days. Sunan Abi Dawood, volume number 2, page 334, page Bab Fil Ida. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, Islam, what do we learn? That the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, being a businessman, always showed good character and showed that when he was promised that when he was told that you wait and I will come back and I will fulfill the amount which I am falling short, the person forgets for 3 days and does not return, but then after 3 days remembers and searches for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and finds the Prophet of Allah in the same place, but the Prophet of Allah, upon seeing him late, does not show any anger. Allahu Akbar, and just asks, where were you? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to follow the character of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Similarly, after Hazrat Sa'id radiyallahu ta'ala an had embraced Islam, he was asked concerning the khulq azim, the manners of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he answered that, O people, I know more of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam than you, as I was his business partner before his announcement of prophethood. He was a person who remained true to his commitment, and no argument ever arose because of him. Found in Abu Dawood, volume number 2, page number 317. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, what do we learn? That the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Hazrat Sa'id radiyallahu ta'ala anhu mentions that he as a business partner of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says that the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a person who remained true to his commitment, and no argument ever arose because of him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to fulfill our commitments which we do in our daily lives, inshallah. The early manhood of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was as untarnished as his youth, an ideal example of respect. Before proclaiming nubuwah, before proclaiming that he was the Nabi of Allah, he encompassed such traits such as truthfulness, sincerity, generosity, respect for elders, the fulfilling of promises, mercy, sympathy, and the protection of the oppressed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all that we should follow such manners of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, his reality was not only unreachable but incomprehensible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all to follow the manners of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. His unique characteristics were not to speak lies, talk unnecessary, and to warmly greet people, be friend or not. Greed, deception, alcohol, thievery, and all others possessed in most of the young during the time of ignorance were unknown to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Everyone in Makkah had distinct respect for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for the conduct he displayed, and he remained virtuous and unfaultable even while being surrounded by the evil practices of the time. Makkah was the center of kufr. During this period, the Kaaba itself containing 360 idols being worshipped, yet never once did the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prostrate before them. Though his family were the trustees and custodians of it, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life was therefore unflawed and free from all sin, including the years before announcing prophethood. Not did the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam only practice such manners after prophethood, but before prophethood his manners were a means of da'wah to the people. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, the kuffar as a result, unsuccessful in spoiling the reputation of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the public eye after his proclamation of nubuwah, due to finding no incident of wrongdoing in any period of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life. Hence it can only be concluded that these were the features of a Prophet of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was because of this that Islam was accepted by the noble and refined people who sacrificed their belongings, wealth and lives for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, we claim to be Muslims, but let us make da'wah with our manners. Let us show that we have the manners which were practiced by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What do we learn before the proclamation position of nubuwah. We learn that the Prophet of Allah, Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, made da'wah with his manners and showed a good image in the eyes of the people. Never did he deceive people. My fellow brothers and sisters in Islam, just to summarize, we learned in regard to the construction of the Kaaba, in which the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam partook. And then we learned in regard to how many times was the Kaaba reconstructed. We learned who were the close friends of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We learned as the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's conduct as a businessman. And we also learned his exceptional conduct, my fellow brothers and sisters in Islam. Let us be Muslims of practice. Let us just not be Muslims of name. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me for whatever mistakes I made during my discourse. May Allah forgive me for whatever mistakes I made in mentioning the Seerah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah guide us all to follow the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May we perform our 5 times Salah with Jama'at. May we leave from this world with the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Wa ma tawfiqi illa billah. Astaghfirullah. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.